When you live the best version of yourself, your imagination, your creativity, your innovation, when you can forgive another person without expecting something to come back, when you can love fearlessly and surrender that love without expecting something to be there, these are all facets of our divinity.
Hey, my friend, this is Julie Reisler. I'm so grateful to be here with you, part of your life journey in being and living into your highest potential, your You-est You. This conversation with Gregg Braden, one of my most favorite people on the planet. He is a dear friend. He's been a guest many times. And I don't want to give it all away, but this conversation is so powerful. You're going to want to make time to listen and probably to listen again and to share this with people you love who are looking to raise their consciousness and to tap into the higher fields of intelligence. I also want to share what's so fun about this interview is I was Gregg's first guest in one of his studios. I got to be in a studio. We got to record this live together. So you're going to see us together real time. It was so much fun. And I want to let you know that if you are also looking to have some support to learn how to truly unlock your intuition, to be able to tap into higher guidance at any time at the drop of a dime, to be able to overcome self-doubt, analysis paralysis, that feeling of being uncertain, of getting into, the logical thinking mind that doesn't always align with our highest good. If you'd like help or support with that, I've opened the doors to my intuition school. I'm going to be leading it live. We start on the portal date 10/10. And all you need to do is go to juliereisler.com/intuition school. I will have all the information below, especially if you're watching on YouTube, and be sure to leave comments. We always love to respond. And because you're part of the You-est You family, you can get $97 off. Just use the coupon code podcast97. So if you would like help really learning how to tap into and trust and rely on your inner guidance, your guidance from the cosmic intelligence, from the divine matrix, and be able to rely on that for everything in life, careers, relationships, health, wealth, all of it, come join me. It's a 9-week live course. You have lifetime access. We'll be digesting the intuition framework, my proprietary framework, and you'll get real-time coaching and mentorship and questions answered. It's going to be amazing. Go to juliereisler.com/intuition school. We start soon. I would love to have you. Be sure to use the special coupon code podcast97 because you're part of the You-est You community and family. All right, my friend, put on your seatbelt. This is such a powerful conversation. I think you're going to love the energy of this, this conversation that we got to have, really about how you can access your highest potential in ways that you may not have thought of or have learned about or know of. It was very real, very raw. And I just hope that you feel even more empowered and encouraged to truly honor your heart, your soul's purpose, to be your You-est You, and as always, sending love and light your way. Mwah. Enjoy.
All right,
Here we
here
go.
we are.
All right. Well, first of all, welcome, beloved friends, family, community, to the You-est You podcast. And you're probably surprised because we are here together.
Is there something different about this podcast today? Let's see.
Something looks different. This is a first, actually. This is the first time of recording this live and with my guest and dear friend in person. And I'm actually in Gregg Braden's studio.
Came to my studio here well, we can't tell you where it is. It's in a hidden bunker in the high desert of northern New Mexico. And,
Yes.
And Julie has dropped in, and we thought we'd take this opportunity just to do something live together. We never do this, completely unscripted. Honestly, we don't even know what we're going to talk about.
No.
And because there's so much to talk about. I mean, there are so many things to talk about. So,
Yes.
Julie, this is your program. This is your
Yes.
community. I'm honored to have you here in my office, in my studio. You're the first. You're actually the first. No one has ever recorded here except you.
Oh, I'm so honored.
And it's a dance, as we typically do, and I'm going to follow your lead on this dance, and let's see where we go.
All right, I'm gonna go. Y'all know I follow intuition, and first of all, this is so fun. Like, how cool is this? We've been getting so many comments. Thank you, because I know you've loved having Gregg. Anytime, Gregg, you've been on the show, people are just writing in how much you're touching their lives and adding to their feeling of possibility and potentiality and groundedness. And I actually thought, this really is going to be a flowing conversation. We have no idea where it's going. So hang on, put on your seatbelts, because we're going to have a fun ride. I was thinking what would be just a place to start would be around really owning your power, how to do that. There, we're just going into the deep end of the pool right away.
Sure.
This is something I keep from the last interview and conversation. A lot of you had comments around so many things are happening in the world that are really challenging. It could even be your own life. You know, you're having challenges. What are ways to really stand in your power and to get the divinity, the possibilities, the infinite nature of who we are? So I'm going to just throw the ball to you. You can go.
And we're sharing a mic right here.
Yeah.
I think you just answered it in the question. I believe that the key to our power is our divinity. I know that means different things to different people. And so let me just begin. If you've never been with us before, I want to say welcome. And I want to talk about divinity just a little bit. There is a sense in the Western world that divinity has something to do with religion. And it's easy to think that. Obviously, there are schools of divinity. I have friends that have gone to schools of divinity, and it certainly can be linked to the power of spiritual traditions. When we look at the definition of divinity, the definition literally says that it is the ability to transcend perceived human limitations. Now, just think about that. All our divinity is, it is our natural human ability to not just survive, but to become more than, to thrive, to transcend, to triumph over the limitations. And the limitations, perceived limitations, they may not even be real limitations. They may be limitations been placed upon us by our conditioning, by our families, education, school, college, community. It could be from our own experience where the outcome wasn't what we expected, and we begin to think that we're powerless beings. So the definition of divinity, the ability to transcend perceived limitations, that's a powerful statement. And I can see, Julie, where religions would wrap the rules and the dogma of the religion around that kind of power. Because when you think about it, these are almost godlike powers. And I'm using that with a little g, not the God, but when we talk about the power of the gods to heal their bodies, the power of the gods to heal others, the power of gods to communicate across vast distances with their loved ones instantaneously, the power of the gods to witness timelines in the future and in the past to help us know how to navigate the conditions of our lives. Those are all godlike powers, and they're all powers that we as humans have. So when we talk about navigating what's happening in our lives today, what we're really talking about is awakening and unveiling our divinity. And I'm going to say it that way because everyone has divinity. Not everyone acknowledges their own divinity. We cannot be separated from it, but we can deny it. And there are many people out there through conditioning or by choice that will deny that they have the power to help themselves in their lives. And that is their choice. There's no judgment. But we can deny our divinity because we're free will beings. We can have our divinity veiled through education, conditioning. If we hear enough times that we are powerless victims of the events in the world around us, beginning at an early age, you begin to believe that. And especially if it happens before the age of 7. From in the womb to the age of 7 is when our brain and our bodies are developing the foundation that is going to lead us through the rest of our lives. The ancient Jesuits knew this really well. Bruce Lipton talks about this a lot. They said, give us your son at that time, because they wanted the males. Give us your son until the age of 7, and he will be a Jesuit for life. And what they meant was, even if their son went to Jesuit summer camp for 7 years and then went back into the home with the parents, the conditioning would be so deeply ingrained and entrenched that he would never be a part of that home again. He would be a Jesuit for life. And this is true for all of us. The first 7 years of our lives, the conditioning, the stories that we were told, and we learned from our parents how to deal with problems in life during those first 7 years. We learn how to, for people that we don't agree with, how we're going to disagree with them. We learn that from our parents. We learn about good people and bad people from our parents. All that's in those first 7 years. So when it comes to divinity, we could be conditioned out of our divinity. So we can either deny it, we can be conditioned out of it. But I want to talk about it right now because we are all casualties of this third piece I'm going to talk about. It can be veiled through technology. And this is exactly what's happening right now. We are all victims of or casualties. I'm going to use that word. We're all casualties of the way technology is being used in our lives today. Social media is a big part of that. Any kind of information resources that are coming to us, the way that information is coming to us determines the way we think about ourselves to a large extent. And that reflects directly into this conversation of divinity. How much information do you get on a daily basis? I'm just going to look at our community and ask them that tell you what a sacred, beautiful, powerful, rare being you are in the world, and how often during the day are you invited to reach deep within inside your own knowing to make the choices in your life. And unless you're very lucky or very blessed, or you're living on an island someplace where you're not plugged into social media, the answer to that is very rarely. So we are conditioned, and there's an intentional skewing of that information that is leading us to feel that we are powerless victims in our lives. And the reason is, if we are powerless victims, it means we need a savior. And the savior that's being touted to you and me and our young people today is technology itself. We're being told that we need technology both in our world and inside of our bodies to be the best version of ourselves, and so that we can compete effectively in the world. That thinking veils our divinity because it is leading us to give ourselves away to the technology rather than empowering ourselves that technology. So we're going to talk about that a lot, unpack it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So far?
Absolutely. I think this aspect about divinity and really getting that we all are this. It's not about being worthy. It's not about needing anything external. Are there any, before we get into the technology aspect, are there any practices, prayers?
Sure. The first practice is unplug from social media.
Yeah.
That is no. And so let me share with you why.
Okay.
I'll tell you right now. And when I say that we are casualties, now I'm not saying it in a negative sense. I'm identifying the fact that we are having this experience. We are in the process of what is called fifth generational warfare, or 5Gen warfare. It's a very different kind of warfare. We're all casualties of it, but nobody's ever told us. It is a warfare that begins in the mind before it ever becomes kinetic in the world. Every problem that's happening in the world today, every single problem, if you took our belief systems out of the equation, the world is fine. It is our belief systems that are clashing, and those belief systems are being manipulated in really, really insidious ways. And I'm a tech guy, and I'm still amazed at how efficient and how I can even be drawn into the sexy marketing and the things that lead us away from our power. So examples, virtual reality, putting virtual reality goggles on your 3-year-old after breakfast in the morning and sitting them in the living room, or giving them an iPad for hours and hours and hours. What that does is they're having experiences on that iPad and in that virtual reality they would never have in the normal world with their friends playing outside and pointing to a window that they'd never have outside. So what that does is the technology entertains them because it's performing all the functions. The technology is showing them images and giving them sounds and visual experiences. Here's the thing: they are watching and observing. They're not imagining. They're not creating. they're not using their divine powers of creativity and imagination and innovation. Those are all aspects of divinity. It's all being done for them, and they're being conditioned away from these deeply cherished human experiences. So when I say um, unplug, it doesn't have to be completely, but just monitor. I mean, really, there is an art and a skill to deriving information that we need in our lives from the way it's being presented to us. You have to be open to different perspectives. If you zero in on one person telling you one perspective every day, you're going to find that it's a very limited perspective. And it may not help you to navigate the issues that are happening or be honest about the issues that are happening in the world. So for me, it's the way we manage incoming information and the discernment that we have around what we expose ourselves to, how long we expose ourselves to it, what we allow our children. They depend on us. Our kids depend on us. This is such a mind blower to me. Next week I'm 70. All right, 70 years old. So, and you're not. And I won't give, but you have a birthday coming up.
Yeah.
And we both are of an age where we remember a world that didn't have the kind of information flow
Yes.
that we have right now. And so we remember, and we have something to base that on. We have a generation of young people, all they know is this digital world. And when the power goes out or their devices are broken, those kids are in tough shape. Can I just share a quick story?
Yeah. Share.
It's a true story. I told this is unscripted.
Yeah, very unscripted.
So many of you know I lead, in the past, I've led groups into Egypt, Tibet, Nepal, Bolivia, Peru. We just completed last year. It was our 39th Peru trip in 37 years. Working with the same guides, and now I'm working with the children of the guides who are now the guides in their own right. So we had this experience. We had a couple of men, good men, who had been friends for a long time, who wanted to do a father's trip to Peru, and each of them brought their eldest son. And they were a year apart. One of them was 15, one was 16. And they stopped over in Miami before their flight in the morning into Lima to overnight in Miami. Well, the two boys decided to go to a party. And they went to a big party, and both of their cell phones were stolen that night. Next morning, they left for 2 weeks in the Andes Mountains with no digital connection. And we all saw this happen. They were very agitated. First couple of days, they became depressed. They started sleeping, and they wouldn't get up to go out and see the sights or anything. And it took into the second week for them to actually come to terms with what had happened and become more themselves. And by the end of the trip, they were so engaged, the two boys with one another, with their fathers. They were reconnecting in ways they hadn't for a long time. And they jokingly said, well, we don't know if we're going to get a phone when we go back. I asked them, I said, you guys going to pick up a phone in Miami? And they honestly said, we don't know. We don't know. Because they had not realized how deeply they were influenced by that piece of technology, because it's all they've ever known. So we saw them go through those withdrawals. So I'm just saying that when we help our young people to regulate and discern the kinds of information and the amounts of information coming in, that is a technique unto itself, because consciously and subconsciously, we're deeply influenced by what we're seeing. I think what you're probably getting at, personal practices, I think more than ever, probably right now, the world is changing so quickly in ways that we've never seen, and it's not over. We're just warming up. I mean, you said buckle up for this program. Yeah. Buckle up for the world changes. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I do know this. Every one of us, you and me, my brothers and sisters, my global family, we're going to need to be healthier than we've ever been in our lives. We're going to need to be more available for ourselves than we've ever been, and more honest with ourselves than we've ever been. So for me, a big part of it is doing what we can to take care of, to honor the gift of life. And it's not a highly structured, I mean, it's not like so regimented, but it's common sense about when we have a meal, are we having that meal? First of all, are we even hungry? because a lot of people right now, since COVID, and I've heard a lot of people talking about this, they eat even when they're not hungry because it's a certain time of day they're supposed to eat, or their family's eating or whatever, but they're not even hungry. So first of all, are you hungry? And if you are, what you're about to nourish your body with, is it the best that you have available to nourish your body with? And that's a promise I made to myself when I was a kid. When I think many people know, I am a product of a very dysfunctional, abusive, alcoholic family. My father left. I didn't know exactly what that would mean. I knew it was going to be hell for a while. And something inside me, it was really interesting. It said, okay, Greg, you're going to need to be in better shape than you've ever been. So let's get with it, And I became a competitive runner and enrolled in 2 different kinds of martial arts. I was training to be at my best so that I could embrace whatever life brought to my doorstep rather than run from it or anesthetize it or hide from it, which many of my friends were doing. And I think we're all in this boat now. You need to be healthy, whatever that means to you, without any judgments about the choices that you make. You need to be the best version of yourself. And I think that is an important aspect to help us to navigate with what's coming down the road. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean,
I don't want to interview you on your own podcast, but I'm curious.
like, oh, brother, this is a topic I could talk about for hours. I mean, I think, even the idea of nourishment, right? How are we nourishing your body? How are you nourishing your mind? I mean, I think the topic of nourishment is really, it's multifaceted, and there's our body temple. There's, going for whole foods and finding the best of the best that you can afford, that you can take into your body. And I think also this reminds me of so much that you've talked about. There's also the intention around how you're nourishing yourself, the divinity of the food you're eating, the mindfulness aspect. And then I even think about the nourishing, the thoughts. You mentioned beliefs. Like, are these thoughts that I'm allowing to come out of the 70,000 thoughts a day, are they nourishing? So when I'm hearing you, I'm just thinking about the power of nourishment and all the ways that we can be nourished.
Well, it's important because, and especially when it comes to food, are we eating to fill the space so that we're no longer hungry? Or are we eating to nourish the gift, what our ancestors called the temple?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, and it's a very different way of thinking for some people, but that's why we're having this conversation. And it's one of the things that's important for me. And if I'm on a plane for 14 hours, it just happened recently. I was on a plane for 14 hours into Eastern Europe. And that's a long time. And I try to bring some of my own food. They won't let me bring some of my own food on the plane now. So when they offered me something, I have the best of what they have to offer. And because I can do that. And my promise is when we land and I have the opportunity to go into a market, I'm going to get what I know really, really nourishes my soul as well as my body. And then I'm fine with that. I know some people that just won't eat on the plane. And then by the time they get to where they're going, they're pretty run down. They're tired, they haven't slept, they haven't eaten. And it's because their belief system is so rigid, it actually prevents them from being the best version of themselves. So this is why I say it's not, it's common sense. And for me, it's about a promise, the promise I made to myself a long time ago. So that's the first thing.
Yes. Can I add one quick thing?
Totally.
Question or thought for you, and I'm sensing, because I know from our beloved friends and community, I've talked about this. It's interesting. You mentioned earlier a little bit about food and filling the space, and maybe that you might have gotten in that habit over COVID time, right? Eating. So as someone who I've talked a lot openly about struggling with food addiction in the past.
You had food addiction?
In my past.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh yeah. So, and I know, I have a feeling there's some of you that might, maybe not everyone.
So I'm learning something.
Yeah.
Here today.
Yeah. I had a hard time managing emotions. I'm very, probably like you, highly sensitive empath, I feel. And so food, if you're using it to fill in the space, it can block emotions. And part of what I can see this going into is how to have our feelings, the spectrum of feelings, not using substances, whether it's, alcohol or food.
Sure.
And what I have learned And this is why it's so important to me as we're talking about this. It's the question of, is this loving? That's the question I ask myself with
Sure.
nourishment. Is this loving for my body, temple, for myself? And I'm saying this because if you're perhaps struggling with food addiction or abusing food, or I don't know, I just sense that that could be, I'm not the only one, that is part of nourishing ourselves, is both not under and not over nourishing, and doing it in a loving way.
Well, you've used this term twice now, the body temple.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick up on that
Yeah.
and say
Yeah.
a couple of things, because again, I think it's important to discern the difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality is about relationships. It's our relationship to our own bodies, to one another, to the future, to the past, our relationship to God, to the earth, to the cosmos, to everyone around us. That's spirituality. Religion came around later and began wrapping the rules and the dogma around the power of that spirituality. So for me, I have always been less drawn to the religion because it was so selective, and more drawn to the spiritual traditions. And almost universally, when we go into these traditions, they say the body is the temple. I wanted to know what that meant. I have a book that was released in 2004 called The God Code that summarizes for me exactly what that means. And then the bottom line is, when we look into the DNA of every cell of our bodies, the chemical codes of those DNA, we now have the ability to translate those chemical codes into the root or the core alphabets of our civilization: cuneiform, Sanskrit, Hebrew, and Arabic. And there is a mathematic code that links the periodic table of elements, the stuff we're made of, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon, with those ancient letters. And when we do that, you literally can read portions of the DNA like you read the words on the back of a book. And the beginning, the top layer of every one of those codes begins exactly the same. And I'll just share with you the words. The DNA literally reads as the words, God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. It doesn't say who God is or where God comes from. It's really interesting because it reads the same in Arabic, it reads the same in Hebrew, it reads the same in Sanskrit and in cuneiform. And we harbor that message. We are the carriers of 50 trillion cells in our bodies. Each of those 50 trillion cells carries that message. When we forget who we are, or we believe our differences are so great that there's no way to reconcile them, we need look no further than 50 trillion copies of a message that we each carry in our bodies, God eternal within the body. And from that perspective, we literally are a sacred vessel carrying that message forward in time. The temple, this is what the ancestors were talking about as a temple. And when we think of ourselves from that perspective, and I know that's a lot of information and more than we're going to get into here today, but the reason I'm sharing it is because when we look at where we are in the world today, we're not the product of random biology, lucky biology, and random mutations as we've been taught. The evidence flat out doesn't support that anymore. And I want to be really clear, I'm a degreed geologist. That's my first degree. I believe in evolution. I've seen it in the fossil records, no problem with it. It breaks down when it comes to Homo sapiens. And I've got lots of books and videos that talk about how and why that is. But the bottom line is we are the product of an intentional act that happened a long time ago, and the architect of that act left a signature inside of our bodies. So when the world looks tough, it helps to make that shift from being this random, just lucky biology kind of aimlessly floating through the world, to know that we're the product of an intentional act, and that we've been given everything that we need to triumph over every condition that life brings to our doorstep. If we have the wisdom to recognize who we are, and the cells tell us, and if we have the wisdom to embrace the tools that God eternal within the body, what do those tools imply? So next time life brings something to your doorstep, the doctor tells you you've got something in your body that shouldn't be there, and that you're not in optimal health. How does God eternal within the body go about remedying that? And it's very different than how a random powerless victim of circumstance would go about dealing with it. And this is part of, I think, what's up for us right now. The world is pushing us into this sense of powerlessness intentionally. And one of the ways it's happening is through the movement to replace us and our bodies with synthetics. So with synthetic chemicals in our blood, sensors under our skin, computer chips in the brain, artificial intelligence implanted into the body. Every time we embrace something like that, we're giving away some of our humanness, we're giving away some of our divinity. And to recognize that helps to put a context into all the crazy stuff. It's not random stuff. If you recognize there's an intentional effort to minimize our humanness and our divinity, because then we are much easier and more vulnerable and more susceptible to the ideas of other people and what they think the world should look like. So just knowing that, don't have to act on that, and don't have to be angry or judge it, but just to recognize that context. Now within that context, to me, it gives me a place to say, okay, do I honor my divinity? Do I honor the gift of my humanness? Does this choice that I'm being asked to make, does it honor my humanness and my divinity, or does it detract or veil or steal my humanness and my divinity? For me, these are tools, very real tools of awareness and consciousness that help me to navigate the world. The thing is, and I want to emphasize this, whatever the choices are, to implement them with kindness. Because if we succumb to the fear and the anger and the hate that is driving us to become something that we are not, to give our humanness away, if we succumb to that, then we are now on the level of the anger and the fear and the hate. We're stuck. That's what keeps us stuck in that ancient trap. We don't want to win. We want to triumph. And here's what I mean by that. The idea of winning and losing, it's an old idea where you're locked in a battle like this. And that's what keeps us stuck in this ancient cycle of hate and fear that leads to the wars that we're seeing now. When we learn to triumph, we rise above, we become more than, and here's how we do it. It's real easy, by being the best version of ourselves. When you live the best version of yourself, your imagination, your creativity, your innovation, when you can forgive another person without expecting something to come back, when you can love fearlessly and surrender that love without expecting something to be there, these are all facets of our divinity. When we do that, we are empowered in this world. And in that empowerment, we are no longer in fear. That's how we transcend the fear. So by living the best version of ourselves, we triumph over these dark times. And the beauty is you don't have to know any of that. And it helps to have a context to know why the world is the way it is. I know that was a lot, but I wanted to say, does it make sense if we say it that way?
Absolutely. So beautiful. And I was like, this is the whole point when I talk about being your You-est You. This really is, it's the same thing.
My me-est me?
Your me, my me-est me, your You-est You, right? We feel like Dr. Seuss when I say that.
Well, you gotta have fun. It's pretty heavy if you don't have some
But
fun.
that's the whole point. You gotta have levity. And this, as you're speaking, I can feel this in my heart, and hopefully you can feel this in your heart. It's the forgiveness aspect, the being the best version of yourself. This, to me, this is a whole different way of being with what's happening, because it's very easy to get sucked in. I think of like a tidal wave, or a what do you call it when there's the
tidal pool or
a
vortex.
current and riptide, and it's easy to get sucked into that energy of fear and anger.
You and I talked about this.
Yeah.
I think it was 1 or 2 podcasts ago. It was right after October 7th in Israel. because we both had friends who were struggling with how to make sense on what to do with the events that happened. And the point that I was making is we all will be on the other side of these events at some point. The question is, what do we become as we get to the other side? Do we sink? Do we become things that we would never choose to become in a million years? Do we become vengeful and hateful and angry? Or can we find a way to respond by being the best version of ourselves? And I think it's true beyond October 7th. The world is changing, and the question is, do we allow those changes to make us into something that we would never choose to be in a million years? Or can we navigate the changes by embracing our divinity that gives us the power we still go through the changes, but it's what we become spiritually on the other side. What kind of a man have I become, a year from now or 5 years from now, having gone through all this? And those are things, this is part of the awakening. And this is part of what consciousness, a conscious being will consider these things. An unconscious being will respond with a knee-jerk reaction, a very primal knee-jerk reaction based probably in the amygdala of the primitive brain, by wanting to get even or by wanting to hurt, out of the fear of not understanding that. So this is all what's up for us, right? And it's up for everybody. Not everyone will acknowledge it. Not everyone responds in the same way, but it's there. It's up for all of us.
Well, and I know if whoever's here with us, our brothers, sisters from around the world, are conscious, wanting to be living in a life that has higher consciousness, because I know you wouldn't be here otherwise. What just came to me, I'm curious, I don't know if I've ever said it this way, maybe we can talk about these divinity boosters. What are ways that we can...
I have a can in the fridge. You want me to go get my divinity booster?
That's a great market. We're gonna pop it over.
I don't know. What a divinity? I've never heard that before.
I don't know.
How would you define a divinity?
Yeah. So you kind of talked a little bit earlier about tapping into creativity and imagination and aspects of ourselves that are naturally going to boost our sense of divinity. And part of it, for what I'm hearing from you too, is that remembering we are divine by nature.
Sure.
And I know for me, this might just be me, I need daily reminders and practices and things that I do to really connect in. And that, so when there's anger or strife, or there's a conversation where I want to show up as loving and open,
Sure.
versus going to reactivity and anxiety and fear. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think
sense.
prayer is a divinity booster.
Yes,
for sure.
About prayer.
Or meditation, depending on what that means. But again, it's not so structured. A meditation for some people is a walk in the forest, is their meditation. Connecting with nature in silence, that definitely is a meditation. It's not a structured formal meditation, but it is. Prayer, and there are different modalities of prayer. Prayer researchers identify 4 modalities of prayer that we practice in the West. And some of those are prayers of supplication, where we say we're powerless. Some of them, like the 5th mode of prayer, is where we feel the feeling as if the outcome of our prayer is already present. And that's a nice way to start the day, as if your body's already healed. And we're always healing. We couldn't be here if we weren't healing. Our bodies are constantly healing on the molecular level every day. And so you give thanks for the healing that's already occurred. There's room for more, maybe, but you give thanks for what has already occurred. You give thanks for the love and the abundance and the success that already is present. There's always room for more, but you're acknowledging what is already there. And I think these are powerful ways. Examples. I did a video recently, and I was asked for examples of divinity and everyday divinity. I think it was 2016. My wife Martha, who you know, is a voting member of the Grammys, and was invited to the Grammys, and she invited me to the Grammys. It was very nice of her. To the Grammy celebrations. And it was the year that they were in New York City. They were typically in LA. This was when they were in New York City. And so I went and I took advantage of the opportunity to talk to just some amazing people, musicians, composers, artists, and every one of them. Julie, I'd ask them all the same question. I would say, it was a little experiment. I would say, when that piece of music came through, or the words of that song came through, where did it come from? And every one of them gave me exactly the same answer. And every one of them, down to the last one, said it didn't come from me. It came through me. All I had to do was step out of the way and allow it to flow. And I've heard the same thing from visual artists. I've heard it from sculptors. I worked in the tech industry for years. When a computer scientist would discover an eloquent piece of computer code that would solve a problem with poetry in the code, or an engineer, they all say the same thing. They say, they were the conduit, is what they say. And so everyday divinity, I think this is important to acknowledge this, is what can we do to allow our creativity, and this is why we're here, our imagination, to flow through us, rather than trying to force it or make it happen. And these are ways of expressing our divinity. And again, it's another way. The AI, they're making AI look really sexy right now. And even I know that, and I see the ads and I think, man, that's pretty cool stuff. When AI is writing your book or your report for you, or AI is doing the portrait or the work for you, of course it's beautiful because it's a computer. What the science has shown, I'll just give you a couple of examples, and this is fresh in my mind because I just did a whole presentation on this. When I was a kid in school, I was taught that we're born with X number of brain cells. And that was the leverage when I was in college. They said, you drink too many beers, you're going to lose all the brain cells, or whatever it was people were doing. Now we know that our brain is actually producing new neurons until the last breath that we take on this planet. We don't have a fixed number, but here's the catch. If those brain cells are not engaged, once they're produced, if they're not engaged in a meaningful way, within about 7 days, they will atrophy and die. Because the brain says, oh, you don't need me anymore. You don't need this, so why should I hang around? So those cells will atrophy and die. Well, when we use AI to produce a portrait of our family or our pets, or we use AI to write the report, is it going to do a cool job? It very, very possibly may. Here's what's happening. We are now no longer engaging those parts of our brains, and they begin to atrophy. And over a period of time, they actually change the way the brain functions. The AI goggles, the virtual goggles, have been around long enough now. There's an article in some of the psychological magazines, and they're saying that young children who are immersed with the goggles in these virtual worlds, where they're seeing these extraordinary colors and shapes and situations they'd never see with their kids on the playground, their friends. When they see that, here's what they're finding. Their brain tissue is actually changing. There's a thickening of the visual cortex, which makes sense because that visual cortex, you're seeing it more, but now the problem-solving skills, those parts of the brain are atrophying. Now, if you're a shaman in the jungle of Costa Rica, and all you do is, plant medicine, for example, and you go out and then you engage with nature, that's probably no big deal. If you are a computer programmer in the defense industry writing software for the nuclear weapons program, and you recreationally are doing plant medicine every weekend, it's the same thing that's happening. There's a thickening of the visual cortex that influences your ability, and it's a detriment to other parts of the brain. So all of these things have consequences, and it all comes back to, rather than, I just gave those as a couple of examples, but for me, it just comes back to the ability to honor our humanness and the abilities that we've been given of empathy, sympathy, creativity, imagination, self-regulation, self-healing, That is how we triumph in this extraordinary time of change that we live in. And I think the question that we're being asked as society right now is how much of our humanness are we going to give away to technology? We're answering that with the choices that we're making, the policies that we're writing, and what we're teaching our kids in schools right now. So that's kind of where that is. It all comes back to our divinity. We're being asked as a civilization, as a society, to acknowledge and embrace our divinity because we're about to give it away to technology.
I feel like the sign we are holding is saying, remember and embrace your divinity. Do not give it away. We're giving it away so easily.
Wake up.
Wake up. Yeah, that is right. Really,
Yeah,
wake up.
yeah.
Well, and I think what I love about what we're also talking about is for anyone listening who might be feeling overwhelmed or anxious or a loss of power, the different practices and ways to connect back in through your heart, your intuition, through nourishing your body, prayer. They're free. They're part of us. We have access.
Yeah, they are. And you know, there's something to the practice. It's more than just what you had for lunch. When you make a conscious effort to seek out the most nourishing food that you can give to your body for each of the 2 or the 3 meals that you have a day, you change in the presence of those choices. You begin to think differently about your body. Your neural networks begin to wire differently to be able to recognize and find those. At first, it might feel awkward, but it will actually change the way that your body seeks out food. That is a practice of divinity. When you make a conscious choice before you go to sleep at night, maybe the last thing you do isn't pull up a YouTube channel
Unless it's this one.
to watch, unless it's this one,
this one you can watch.
to watch, yeah, to see all the bad things happening in the world, because now, 3 minutes later, when you close your eyes in your subconscious, and your brain sinks into the deeper levels of that consciousness, those images are playing a role in the chemistry that your body is producing. If you have seen wartime images and people are telling you that you're threatened and that your country is going to go to war and you're going to need to get some new medicine in your body and new masks, and then, okay, now you go to sleep, your body now is saying, it's translating all that into fight or flight. So those are conscious choices that you can make, and they become physiological choices, because they do change not only the way your brain wires, but the way that the chemistry that's released in the body during the time of rejuvenation and sleep. That's what you want, rather than the chemistry of high levels of adrenaline and cortisol and fight or flight because you just saw some scary stuff, before you go to bed. Those are all things that we can do. It doesn't have to be sitting and meditating every day, which is cool.
Right.
Praying, but these are conscious lifestyle choices. And I have no children of my own. I know people that do. And I know this may be easier said than done, but to help your young people, rather than denying them access to the information, to help them learn about discernment and why it's important to discern what it is they're allowing into their minds, into their eyes, and into their bodies. Not that they shouldn't see it, but to help them understand the impact. There's a consequence, and do they want that consequence? And these are all things that we can do. It can be a scary looking world because we're seeing a magnitude of change that we've not been prepared to accept in our generation, and that we've never seen in our society. And if I thought about it from that way, it'd probably scare me as well. What I know is those are opportunities for me to be the best version of myself. So that's the big context, is what's happening in the world, but you can let that go and just know that everything you do to be the best version of yourself is all you can do, and it's the best you can do to prepare yourself just to be happy, healthy, joyous, vital, because you're celebrating your humanness and your divinity. And I think that's really the message here.
Beautiful. Beautiful, and it's worth celebrating.
Yeah.
The one other area I would love to talk to you about that's
Okay.
connected, and we talk a lot about in the show and in general here about the power of our intuition.
Sure.
And AI doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have intuition. It doesn't have a heart. And so tapping into our divinity, maybe just share a little bit about the power of our intuition, how to connect into it, and any thoughts you have that
Sure.
would be
Well,
helpful.
thank you. Well, AI cannot, and it's for this reason. We're led to believe AI is new because we just heard about in the last couple of years. We were working with primitive forms of AI back in the 1980s when I was working in the corporations, in the industry, in the defense industry. It wasn't what it is now. It wasn't Chat GPT for sure. But what I learned about AI is it's really fascinating, is that the AI, is it efficient? Absolutely. Is it fast? Absolutely. Can it do some amazing and beneficial things? Medical industry, for example, looking for, there was an article in one of the medical journals recently where the AI was able to look in the plant kingdom quickly and find not the plants only, but the combinations of the plants that would remedy some of the cancers that we're seeing today. Whereas humans, if a human were to sit down and do that, and you could do it on a piece of paper, I guess it'd take you forever, methodical, you need a whole team. So there's some really, it's not the technology, it's right, wrong, good or bad, it's how we apply it in our lives. So I just want to say, AI can only give us the answers. This is really important, that the algorithms we have given it to work with will allow. So here's what I mean by that. There are people asking questions of AI right now, of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is giving them the wrong answers. And the reason it's giving the wrong answers is because ChatGPT goes onto the World Wide Web for data, and that data is skewed. We have filters that only allow certain kinds of data to come to us. We have algorithms that won't allow certain words or won't allow certain ideas. So the AI is feeding us what we have given it the tools to feed us, and it is missing a lot of the information that now it can learn. It can learn. So it doesn't have intuition. Our intuition, I didn't know we were going to do this, so I'll do it from memory. There was an article that was published in 2014, peer-reviewed article in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine. And what it said is, I'll paraphrase the statement. It said that there is overwhelming evidence that the physical heart is connected to a field of intelligent information that is not bound by the laws of space and time. So I want you to think about that your heart, I'm just pointing everyone watching this, your heart is linked to a field of information, a field of energy that is not bound by over here or over there or by today or tomorrow. This is where intuition comes from. This is why our humanness is important, because we link to that field through our DNA and through our cells. When we replace our DNA and our cells with synthetics, we lose access to that field. There are peer-reviewed scientific articles literally saying that DNA are fractal antenna that tune us. The DNA, it's a shift in thinking from sticky, gooey stuff in the cells that you put on your IT hat, your information technology hat. And the DNA and the genes that make up the DNA are literally resonant antenna. They are finely tuned to something in that field, and that tuning is not bound. It's not limited by space and time. This is the reason I just did a video on this. There was a woman in Australia who woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and knew that her son in Afghanistan was in trouble. She called. His commanding officer said he was fine. She knew that he was in trouble before even the commanding officer knew that his convoy had hit a roadside bomb. The vehicle, the Humvee in front of him, had been blown up. His was safe. He went into the burning Humvee in front of him to save his friend, who was the driver, and he did, and they were both saved. And it wasn't until he called his wife and his mom later that day on a Skype call and told them what happened they knew the details, but his mom knew and his wife sensed something was happening, and they were in prayer before they ever got the information validated. How does that happen? It's because their neurons in the heart, their neurons in the brain are resonant antenna tuned to the field that's not limited by distance. So for them, it doesn't mean there's Afghanistan or Australia. It's right there. And we all do this. This is how mothers know when their children are in trouble. Can I just share? I don't know how long you want this to be, but
Oh, I mean,
this is fresh in
fascinating.
my mind because
Yeah.
I just did we did a whole series on this. What scientists have found recently is that when a woman conceives a child and that child is inside of her body, even if the child doesn't go full term, even if it's never born, that the baby's DNA circulates through the mother's blood and is kept in the liver. If the baby is born, that DNA, that living DNA, stays in the liver of the mother for a period that they are now measuring in decades. So tens of years. But here's the flip side. The mother's DNA is also lodged in the body of the baby for life. So when you think of DNA as a fractal antenna, now what you're saying is moms and their kids, their DNA is connected energetically. It's always communicating. And this is why it helps to understand. I lost my mom during COVID. And it was really, I knew that I was going to lose her, and I didn't know it was going to happen so quickly, but it was really hard. And there was a physical pain, and people talk about that. What is that pain? It is literally a connection between my DNA was in her body and her DNA was in my body. And there was a communication when she stopped breathing and her body went back to the earth. It was cremated. That communication was lost. And of course we would feel that.
Yeah.
Of course we would feel that. So all to say that we are so much more than we've been led to believe. And there's a deep level of communication, and that communication falls under the umbrella of what we call intuition. Intuition is our ability to feel and to sense, not necessarily vocalize, but to feel and sense one another in all life on this planet, because energetically, we're all connected. We're all part of this. When I began reading, this is peer-reviewed scientific articles. When I began reading those, it helped me to understand why the loss of my mom was so hard. And then I have friends who have lost their children. The children have gone before the parents have passed, and why that is so hard for them as well, because we're all so deeply, deeply connected. So the intuition is that communication. Our job is to learn, first of all, to acknowledge that we even communicate on that level, number one, and that's a big step for some people, and other people it's always come naturally. But number two, to learn to trust the intuition. So there was another study, and this one is a hoot. I love to share this one. Women, the scientists found when they did the study, and I'll do women first. Women know within 3 to 5 seconds whether or not the person standing before them is a potential compatible life partner. And even if their intuition says no, their logic, their brain, their conditioning, society, their parents will override that and say, oh, give this person a chance. And they might give that person 10, 15, 20 years of their lives to find out what their intuition told them in 3 to 5 seconds. Men, we have the intuition as well, but ours works a little differently. And in that, everybody standing in front of us is a potential compatible partner for some period of time. I don't know. We think we're wired a little bit differently, but the point is we all have intuitive hits. How often do we trust and honor them? And it's not blind trust. You can test your intuition, test it. Give yourself a circumstance or situation and find out how you respond to that. Because once you demonstrate to yourself a few times that you're right on, it becomes second nature, to acknowledge that intuition and that trust. And a lot of this speaks to what we call heart coherence. Other programs we've talked about establishing coherence between the heart and the brain, opening the space to access the intuition. It's on another podcast. I don't know. I'm looking at time. I don't know if we have time to do,
We
do
can
any
do
of that, but
a review.
I mean, just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's, in 1991, scientists found about 40,000 specialized cells in the average human heart that are like brain cells. And they were saying, why are there brain cells in the heart? They're called sensory neurites. They feel, think, sense, and remember independently of the cranial brain. And that means every experience we've ever had, from our deepest joys to our greatest trauma, we record in the brain as a memory, but we record in the heart, and the heart works differently. It's a different kind of memory. And this is why often when people are seeking to heal PTSD, you come back from war or abuse, we've all had trauma in our lives of some kind. If we address only the memory in the brain and what we verbalize from the brain, it can certainly help. And I think, I've had that. My father left our home as an abusive alcoholic. We all we're still dealing with that. And I think you always do. But the therapy helped with that. But there's always something that was missing. There was something incomplete, and it wasn't until I understood the role of the heart, I began to understand, unless we address the heart memories as well as the memories in the cranial brain, we may feel incomplete with that trauma. And so intuition plays into all of this. And when we harmonize these two neural networks, the neural network in the heart and in the brain, we harmonize them. It's called heart-brain coherence. What we do is we create a state of consciousness that allows deep intuition on demand and allows us to review our life experiences objectively without the judgment of the rightness or the wrongness or, the betrayal and all the words, that we give, which are all true on one level. But if you're going to heal that, got to go to a deep level. Heart-brain coherence is a very powerful way to objectively address the hurt in our lives, both as individuals and as communities. There's a lot of this happening in the Middle East right now. There are people there that are working in the refugee camps in Jordan with the Syrian refugees, for example, helping them to come to terms with what's happening. And I think there are the opportunities for a lot more. Okay, here's why I'm laughing. We lost power a few days ago, and all the computers went down. They were down so long the batteries ran, and then the batteries were down. So and we're doing this on Zoom. When Zoom rebooted, there was an upgrade to Zoom, and there's a feature where the camera will see a hand gesture and it will mimic that on the screen, and I could never get it to work. It just worked.
Yeah.
I did this, and I was holding it, and it's telling me it's seeing it right now. Can you see it's seeing it?
Yeah.
And it's going to come up, and there it is. So it works.
There it works. If
All
we
right.
do this, we'll get the heart.
Oh yeah, you can do that.
See if it gets it. That's okay.
No, you have to hold it.
I have to hold it. Okay, this is part of our fun today. We're sending you love. We are beaming you love in heart coherence.
Seeing us? I don't know if it does two of them.
Oh, it might be confused.
Probably freaking out.
Like,
We freaked out the AI.
It's like too many hearts.
So this is the power of heart-brain coherence. And we're the only form of life that can consciously harmonize the neural network in the heart and the brain at will, on demand, when we choose, for the purposes that we've identified. You create a strong immune response when you do that, create more resilience to change, increase your heart rate variability, HRV, more resilience. It awakens longevity enzymes, which who doesn't want that? They're there, they just need to be awakened. And it opens the door to deep states of intuition that becomes the launch pad for what we do, or prayer, what we do with that intuition or that prayer from that point. So heart-brain coherence is a powerful facet of our divinity.
Beautiful.
I'll stop there.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll try it one more time. Let's see.
You do your own.
Little hearts. Come on, heart. Usually it works. All right. Well, we're
No, you have to just hold it.
You got to hold it. All right. So I'm sending you love. Heartbreak coherence. At some point, this computer is going to pick.
It didn't see it. Well, why did it see this?
We're having fun. Got to bring some levity in here. I just want to thank you so much. It's a reminder for everyone here to awaken, to remember, to embrace your divinity, your divine right to a life that is happy and healthy and prosperous and joyful, and that even amidst really tough times, we can prevail.
I love it when you talk that way.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to listen to before I go to bed tonight. I'm going to listen.
It's true.
I'll listen to that recording.
It's true.
Yeah.
You're inspiring me and all of us. And this, to me, this is so important. It's important to keep this top of mind, top of heart. One of the last question I'll ask is there anything either I didn't ask you, or, we call them heart flares, something that is there for you that you want to share?
Within the context of what we're doing here, and in the constraints of our time we have here, I think we covered. That's why I told a couple of stories. I think stories are important to really kind of ground an idea. You can throw an idea out there, but once you see a story of how it works in the world, I think that helps a lot. And the idea of divinity, I think for me, is to what I hope to gain from this. One of the things is to take divinity out of the realm of something that is esoteric and religious and bring it into everyday life as a natural part of our potential, our capabilities, and what we're here to live. And if it's a new idea or a new concept, I know it's a lot to think about. I know it's a very different way of thinking as well. It's not the way I was raised, for sure. I had to open my heart and my mind to the possibility that there are other ways of thinking about the world than what I was taught. And that was a big step for me. I was born and raised in a conservative community in northern Missouri, right in the Midwest. People don't think like this. They didn't at that time. My neighbors, my friends didn't, and maybe that's changed. But I think that's the first step. But if this is the first time, I think you'll be amazed when you look at the world that life brings to your doorstep and think back to what Julie and I are talking about today. I think you'll be amazed at how well these ideas will serve you and help you to bless any old ideas and let them go with love and grace, rather than trying to force them to serve you when you may have outgrown them. And there's a very good possibility that you've outgrown the belief systems that led you to this point. And that's good, because now there's a new belief system that is emerging for you. So, Julie, thank you for coming all the way to New Mexico. We could sit here and do this.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
I love that I feel like I've jumped into your studio.
You have. This is you're channeling me. I can leave now. I'm going to read and go write a new book. She's going to take over.
I'm going to pretend to be Gregg, which is not going to work. I am so grateful. This, to me, is it's really the most important conversation I personally believe we can have, and that we can talk about. And I want to end with, you said the 4 words, God is in every cell.
God eternal within the body.
God eternal within the body. And it's something, I say something similar to recognize my cells every morning, and just love that. If that speaks to you, and of course, if God doesn't work, you put in the word that does. Just to remember, we are literally we're made of this divine stuff. And I could not think of a better person in the world to have this conversation with. This is such a gift, such a blessing. I mean, I love talking to you from thousands of miles away, but this is way more fun.
It's kind of fun.
It's really fun. And I hope this is fun for you to be part of this conversation, and most importantly, to inspire and empower you to remember who you really are. That's the whole point. Because when we each do that, we have a way of shifting our body, our beliefs, consciousness. This is how we change the world, I believe.
It's how we rock this world.
It's how we rock it. Yeah.
Rock it into love. We're going to love up this world like we've never loved this world before.
Yeah. And we need each of us to do that with kindness.
All right. Until our next.
Thank you.
I'll say thank you. We love you all.
Ah,
Thank you so much.
try it one more time. Love to you all. Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, thank you for being here with us. May this conversation be a blessing for you and all those that you're here to connect with and serve.
And thank you, Julie. Thanks. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
request.
Hey, my love, it's Julie. I just wanted to pop in here really quickly to share something very exciting for you. Being a part of this beautiful You-est You podcast family, I wanted to share a special that I have going right now. I am opening the doors now to my intuition school. This is going to help you to really learn how to use your intuition as your inner GPS. Your intuition is literally your superpower. It has healed and changed my life, and I want to help you to do the same. Go to juliereisler.com/intuition school and use the code podcast97 to get $97 off of tuition. So here's the thing. There are 9 modules. I'm going to teach it to you live every week. You have everything recorded. We're going to dive deep. All things woo, wisdom of oneness, as you know, learning how to muscle test, learning how to connect with your spirit guides, your higher self, learning how to assess your energy system and your chakras, and so much more. Go check it out at juliereisler.com/intuition school. And if your soul is feeling a calling, a nudge to do this, be sure to use the special code podcast97. I would love to have you there. I'd be honored to be part of your journey in activating your most powerful asset, your intuition. Sending love always. I hope to see you there.